Merry Christmas. I'm Jody Pritzel, author of 3 vintage Christmas history books, vintage with pretty pictures, Immigrants, Ornaments, and Legacies full of facts, and another one that covers how U.S. Christmas stamps came to be. Thanks for buying my books from Amazon and watching my videos. Harry Heim and Santa Novelties' place in American-made glass Christmas ornament history has often been relegated to a recap of failure with a focus on a Christmas folly. I don't think that was a fair thing, and I think there's more to the story. A life has many chapters, and Harry Heim's was colorful and resilient, which is why I wanted to make this video, because he and Santa Novelties were more than a 3-year event that created optimism and then disappointment as the destination Santa Heim, where some youngsters had the time of their lives. Some of Harry Heim's legacy is domestic tree toppers to compete with the German offerings, and his ornaments were the first American-made glass Christmas ornaments to hang on a United States national Christmas tree. Now, some initial thoughts on Santa Novelties. I don't want to keep you in suspense too long, and then I'll roll into the story. Santa Novelties by Harry Heim can either be corning blown like rounds in this picture, or mouth blown like this one in my hand, or these other ones from Kathy. Mouth blown Heims have a narrower neck. Took out my calipers, 0.37 measurement versus 0.62 for a corning blown bulb if you want to geek out on ornaments. Early Heim caps have etchings on the scallops rather than smooth, and they are thinner than a traditional corning cap. In this picture, you can see how I actually crushed a cap trying to put it back on an ornament. If you have a Baltimore, Maryland, and San Diego box like this one, it's around 1944 to 1947. If you have a box marked Santa Heim, Maryland, it dates from 1948 to 1950. This is a later version of Santa Novelties when the company was based in Savage, Maryland. And the Tiny Tim line of miniatures, which was likely around 1949. Another piece of trivia, Heim called his tree toppers, sometimes he called them spikes. Now the difference between an American-made tree topper and one from Europe is in the base. Look at this picture. Heims were not flared versus those from countries like Germany. Bells and lantern shapes are not Heim Santa Novelties. Corning sold those to Shiny Brites and George Franke. To confuse things tremendously, some of the same decorators that painted ornaments for Harry Heim painted for George Franke. So it's murky to tell the difference. So let's start calling some things Heim Frankes, and more to come on that later on. Oof. With that preamble, let's meet the man who competed with Shiny Brites and his legacy that was sold to the George Franke Company. Harry's father ended his 3-year service in the Civil War as a corporal. He then became a carpenter in his native Baltimore, Maryland. His wife, Annie, set up house often as the family moved frequently throughout the city. She chased after her oldest son, Warner, 2 daughters, Mary and Ivy, and the youngest son, Harry Harrison Heim. Now, there was a 14-year spread between Harry and his brother, Warner. Rather than becoming a carpenter like his brother and father, Harry, at the age of 18, apprenticed as a window dresser. He married Nellie in 1903 when times were slow in that store decorating business and window dressing. Harry was a driver and at one time, even a florist. Around 1914, Harry, with his two young daughters, Lillian and Dorothy, moved across the country to San Diego, California. Hard to believe, before Kmart and Walmart, department stores enticed shoppers by changing window displays each week. Harry Heim's domain was the Marston Company store in San Diego, California. Harry's favorite mannequin was named Eve, who he dressed twice a week for the windows. His reputation grew, his craft polished with fashion shows and staged events. Harry had this to say about color and art.
Colors have a great influence on people. If you want to get a roaring headache, spend about an hour in a room fitted entirely in red. If you want to get inspiration for a speech on optimism, compose the speech in a room done artistically, in blue or green.
Marston's was also famous for their Christmas displays and goods. Harry learned an important lesson that to sell products, you have to promote and sometimes exaggerate. He learned to tell stories that reporters could use and how to sell products using advertising. His success was both notoriety and financial. He earned enough to buy a 1917 touring automobile, which began a lifetime affection for cars, that he passed on to his son, Harry Heim Jr., born in California. Like his father before him, Harry was supporting a family of 6, with the birth of his third daughter, Nellie, born in 1919. Snappy dressing allowed Harry to appear taller and thinner than he actually was. Fond of suits and fanciful ties, jackets covered his nearly 200-pound frame, and the well-cut, come on, the man was a fashionista, made him appear taller than his height of 5'6¾". He was very specific about that. And he really was into color palettes.
My favorite colors are lavender and Nile green. They seem more expressive to me than any other colors.
Heim also had an eye for what women wanted to wear and purchased a dress shop that had fallen on hard times in San Diego. Believing in himself, he added his name to the brand of the store. He at one time also owned the Bluebird dress shop. It was a family affair with the help of his wife and 2 daughters working in the store. The shops were successful until the Great Depression squashed consumer spending. The Heims moved to a cheaper rental at $30 a month in San Diego. At nearly 50, supporting his wife Nellie, Lillian, Dorothy, Nellie E., and son Harry Jr., Harry lost the dress shop. During what was already a stressful time, his youngest daughter, Nellie E., needed advanced medical care. Sometimes in life, we go back where we don't know where to go. Since he was originally from Baltimore and the relatives still lived there, Harry packed up the family and returned to his home city to start over and save his daughter. He had 10 cents in his pocket. Harry's daughter, Nellie E., 9 years old, received care at Johns Hopkins Hospital. To support the family, Harry Sr. and Harry Jr. hustled and developed an interior design business. With entrepreneur spirit, they played around, fashioning cellophane straws into white pom-poms, adding a Christmas bulb in the center. Now, near the hospital, Harry rented space in the basement of the Goldfield Hotel, owned by an African-American couple, the Russells, Robert and Marie. Marie and Harry clicked and she took an active interest in Harry's business. She was also very emotional about Christmas. As a school teacher in Washington, D.C., Marie launched a poor children's stocking project.
I used to gather up all the children I could find who were without Christmas cheer, from the slums and everywhere, and see that they got a toy and a stocking on Christmas.
Around 1934, certainly by 1936, in the basement of the Goldfield Hotel, 15 African American women spent hours twisting and gluing cellophane into tabletop trees, adding tiny bulbs purchased from Japan. With his experience with color, Harry realized that if he turned the green branches into white and painted them gold or silver, guess what? He could double the selling price. Buyers from Woolworths and Kresge's placed orders, and now he had the ears of retail chains. Harry Heim Jr., just 22 years old, designed and modified the machines used to make the tabletop trees. To make ends meet during the off-season, Heim workers crafted kites. Harry designed the Christmas display layout at Hutzler's department store in Baltimore. The Afro-American newspaper pointed out the irony of the Heim decorations sold at Hutzler's.
The Hutzler department store, Baltimore's largest, which discourages colored trade, was decorated entirely by decorations made by these colored girls, Mr. Heim making the layout.
During the 1930s, many businesses lacked employee diversity, and Hutzler's was not an exception. In 1940, the Heim Art Company formed with 10,000 shares of stock owned by Marie Russell and Harry Heim. The cash infusion allowed Heim to buy an abandoned school in Towson, Maryland on Chesapeake Avenue. Harry and Harry Jr. worked for hours to perfect a silver nitrate solution for 3 years. They were messing around with making bulbs, and Harry Jr. was almost blinded by a chemical explosion. The Heims persisted, believing they could blow glass, decorate bulbs, and sell American-made Christmas ornaments. Sadly, by the time Harry Heim had his second factory, Nellie, his 20-year-old daughter, passed away. Grieving, he spent hours at 3900 Lombard Street in the factory that took up an entire city block, the site of the former Monumental Brewery. Now, I have a theory that Heim didn't blow glass ornaments and sell them until he had a factory of his own, which would have been in 1940, because the process requires equipment and space. Now, with his son Harry helping, Heim taught himself to blow glass, and in 1941 began recruiting men for ornament work to blow glass. The magic of creating Christmas bulbs starts with raw tube glass that Harry purchased from, guess what? You know, Corning, in 5-foot lengths, then cut to a manageable size and heated. Tubes were stretched, then cut into 1-foot sections. 2 rounds could be blown from a 6-inch section. That's a lot of bulbs out of one piece of glass. The glass was reheated and formed into bulbs by talented craftspeople. By 1944, Harry Heim employed 50 people, of which 8 were glass blowers. Now, one of his blowers, George Brown James, nicknamed Jeep, Started with Harry running errands for $1.50 per week. So talented, he was the #1 glass blower for Santa Novelties. He'd be with Harry for quite some time, and a little bit more on Jeep coming up. Another talented artist was George Dorsey, a former lamp glass blower. And breaking the gender stereotype. Because again, here the employment picture was male, female. It was very, very segregated and specific. Morganzia Hicks was one of Harry's first employees, and she learned to blow glass. Heim reported that Hicks, Jeep, and George Dorsey could each blow 3,500 bulbs a day. Now take out your calculator. If they worked 8 hours, suspend breaks and lunches for a minute, that's 480 minutes in a day, or 7 ornaments each minute. To blow a balloon, much less craft glass into a round, well, let's see how long it takes. I'm thinking Harry kind of oversold his initial volumes. Golly, he was a promoter. But they're special ornaments. Santa Novelties cleaned their ornaments first, washed the interior with a solution of tin chloride, and a hot water bath sped the process up, followed by the silver nitrate and a precipitant. They were lacquered by workers like Mrs. Adele Moore and Miss Clarice Pitts, who used 12 different colors, of which 4 were shades of Harry's favorite color, which was green. The bulbs were painted by decorators like Ruth Freeman using watercolors, who followed patterns created by Harry Heim Jr. So again, big family affair that's going on in the ornament business in Baltimore. Girls, one being Helen Schluter, worked the saws, because again, you've got to saw off the pike end after it's decorated. Heim's Christmas business sold a reported $250,000 worth of bulbs in 1944. During World War II, all Americans were encouraged to work in factories. Prior to the 1960s, when landmark legislation was introduced to prevent discrimination, want ads were segregated by race and gender. Harry had an idea to send girls on the road, advertise for help to places like Milwaukee, that he could personalize ornaments. Again, think about it though. He has this store mentality, right? He has a department store mentality. That's where he thinks he's going to get the sales. Now, I've struggled with Harry's success and the claim that he was selling Woolworth's 12 million bulbs in 1944. Well, first of all, I don't know where he found the metal caps. Yes, there are examples of Heim ornaments with cardboard caps, but not too often. And then again, I have in my hands a Woolworths box. It has the W branding on it. These are extremely hard to find. Now, inside are a dozen Heim ornaments. He must have bought them from Corning because they're not mouth blown. So perhaps these are 1943 or 1946, but if that's the case, then Max Eckhart, being the sole supplier to Woolworths, needs a second look. By October of 1945, the U.S. government released the silver nitrate supply, and by the way, in 1946, Corning can blow 100 million bulbs. Remember that from my previous videos? Harry says he can do 12 million, making him a market leader. Was that another showman boast? I think Corning did agree to sell him bulbs, but only rounds. But we shall move on. The heyday for Harry Heim was the Christmas of 1948, 49, and 1950. In 1947, Baltimore, Harry cranks out a variety of ornaments. He sells them through at least one company that provides display merchandise to stores, again. And in all that volume and that $250,000, I think Harry is actually selling a lot of high-priced store displays. But I shall show you this one. Many people call this a parachute or a turnip. Thanks to Alan in Pennsylvania, we know Harry called this a crinkle middle. There's a top crinkle and there's also a bottom crinkle, like the one you see here. Crinkle bottom. Bottom crinkle, crinkle bottom. Either way you want to go. They're crinkles. Some of Harry's larger items, like that 3-foot staff and cane, that was all sold for store displays. Now, Mark emailed to booksbyjody2021@gmail.com. Me has this amazing Heim bird ball from 1949, Envy. This is a ball, and Heim sold them with or without tips. And this one, if it were 6 inches, it would be called a giant crinkle. And Santa Novelties sold lemon balls, not teardrops. Later in the video, I'm going to show you a giant ball with crinkle bottom that is got snow with it. With his success, Harry thinks big, really big, showman big. It's not enough to have a factory. He decides to buy a town, Savage, Maryland, the site of a former cotton canvas mill with history dating to pre-Civil War. In August 1947, he spends around $400,000, about $7.5 million in today's dollars, to buy the dormant mill, 600 acres, 175 houses, and Savage's utilities. Savage and the townspeople have helped America through 3 wars, sometimes working 18 hours a day to defeat enemies. But after the war in 1947, it has a smattering of businesses, some workers' homes still lack indoor plumbing, and there's not really a good, solid police force. The town is down on its luck. A company town, the 1,000 residents don't make the $1.25 a day. $1.25 they used to make per hour, so it's hard to afford company house rent of $9 a month. Heim promises to change that. Former Savage Mill employees like Mr. Perkins are skeptical of Harry's plans.
The employment policy of Mr. Heim, or whoever takes over the mill, is another thing we worry about. Probably a majority of the mill hands have passed 40 and are turned down at other factories now. And many who've worked all their adult lives at the mill have no other skill.
You see, he wants to have a Christmas destination town. Undeterred, Heim moves ornament-making equipment from Baltimore 20 miles to the new home of Santa Novelties. Harry Jr. was tasked with the machinery installation, and the canvas factory is converted by the spring of 1948. But Heim is serious about hiring mature people since the product is light. William Perkins does find employment again with Santa Novelties. Harry also hires an incredible number of female workers who are separated and divorced, or people like Marie Bond, who is Mr. Perkins's daughter, who is widowed. There's a plethora of them. In 6 months, Savage is transforming. Some residents are able to purchase their homes and they fix them up. Now, 3 buses a day transfer workers from Baltimore homes to Savage and return them at night. Particularly the highly skilled glass blowers are moved back and forth. Now think about that. In winter, that trip probably took an hour or 2 each day. Riding one of the 3 buses every day is George Jeep. Remember him from earlier, for his art of blowing glass ornaments. George is so well thought of. Harry sends him to San Diego, California to train the staff when Harry opens a second branch around 1946. So think about this. He has 2 branches, ornament factories, buying a town. Mouth-blown Heims have a distinctive tip, and you can actually buy them. You could actually purchase them at the time period with or without a tip. You can find double indents and 4 indent bulbs. Heim claimed he was selling 65 million ornaments, or 60% of the same volume as Corning Blue in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, with ribbon machines. Now, we can split hairs, how many days Corning runs, how many are really blown by the glass blowers in Savage, but let's just say I'm a skeptic. What I can say is that Heim's run was short, basically 1946, 44 to 50, versus Shiny Brites and George Franke, who, had 20-year legacies. Santa Novelties might have lasted past 1950 if Harry had just focused on ornaments. What were you thinking, Harry? But he wanted to create that town called Santa Heim. When he opens up Santa Heim, 20,000 people show up when Santa opens the festivities in December of 1948. Harry hired clowns from the Barnum and Bailey Circus. He put up tents to house life-size motorized animals. Bands roamed the town. There were nursery rhyme cutouts. Whole town's decorated. Huge toy store. Harry converted 2 of his trailers into food stands that sold hot dogs and souvenirs. And by the way, I'm not sure that he didn't use those trailers to drive ornaments from Savage, Maryland to San Diego, but more on that. He chartered trains to transport families from Baltimore to his Christmas destination of Santa Heim. Harry strung lights from one end of the town to the other, creating a magical setting. Visitors to Santa Heim purchased ornaments with an open area for personalization. I wish I was 8 years old back then. Harry expanded his product line to include cluster ball trees. I wonder where Shiny Bright got their idea for their cluster ball tree. Heim scores a coup in 1948 when he provides the bulbs for President Truman's National Christmas Tree. George Brown James, Jeep, now reportedly paid his worth $100 a week, also blew 48 special jumbo ornaments, one for each state in America. And Miss Eloise Harris painted each sitting governor's signature on the bulb. CBS made a big deal about Harry Heim's ornaments and the governor's, even enlisting Eve Arden for promotion, which of course Harry must have loved. Large Heim ornaments were hung to enhance daytime viewing of the National Christmas Tree that you can see in this photograph. Now I've studied the picture closely, marveling at the size of the bulbs. I keep looking, though, for 2 people that are supposedly in this photograph. Jeep was supposedly put in charge of the decorating, and Harry Harrison Heim is said to have supervised the work. Still studying it, but I do like to think that Jeep is at the top of the tree. Now remember, Harry Heim was used to creating items for large store displays. And here is the size of the bulbs with this actual ornament owned by the Hargrove family from the 1949 National Christmas Tree. All the promotion and publicity couldn't compensate for Harry's lack of financial discipline. He was paying himself $31,200, or the equivalent today of $420,000. He buys cars, Steinway pianos, brand new furniture, even though his wife and daughters are living in San Diego running the California operation of Santa Novelties. For companionship or rent, living with Harry are Fred, the factory supervisor of Santa Novelties, and Minnie and Bessie that also work at the factory.
I really don't care if I don't make any more money, but I've found that if you help other people, you can't help but profit yourself.
Ornament business falls off. Some workers paid on piecework opt to quit Santa Novelties. The IRS comes after Harry for tax evasion. He pays a restitution, but I think Harry was in real financial trouble, which led me to a discovery. Made me feel a little bit like Louis Gates, host of Finding Your Roots. Then we made a discovery. The 1950 census for Savage, Maryland has 2 sections and a third for people outside the city limits. Now, all of the employees of Santa Novelties work 40 hours except for 4 people. Stanley Coleman and his wife, Helen, worked 70 hours a week. And I thought, well, census taker made a mistake. Then I found 2 other people who didn't work 40 hours a week. It is possible that 60-year-old Roscoe Coleman, listing his occupation as co-owner of a Christmas ornament factory, invested in Santa Novelties, and that provided a cash infusion to Harry Heim. Now, he and Alice, working part-time at the factory, are the parents of Stanley, who was working 70 hours a week with his wife. Did Roscoe want his son to have a future, and that's why he invested in Harry? Boy, that's one of those discoveries that makes you think, doesn't it? I do believe that Santa Novelties was the market leader in tree toppers or spikes. I really do. You can get more money for those too, rather, than single balls. They were all crafted by hand. Now, to make a tree top, the first stage, of course, you blow the glass, followed by silver nitrate, and then they're painted by hand. So Harry, he was good at that. I mean, he's competing with the Europeans and selling a ton of tree toppers, I'm guessing. In 1951, Heim's Steinway piano is sold, the cars, the furniture, and most importantly, the equipment is auctioned off.
The Federals came in and sold Heim's houses and his plant and his furniture, not to mention his cars. His ideals were all right, but they were bigger than his hip pocket, meaning his bank account.
George Franke's Sons Company in Baltimore buys the Heim equipment, so Franke and Heim at one time or another both sold Corning bulbs, both used the Made in the US of A cap. That's where I'm almost starting to think we should say Heim Franke, because there's some blurring there. Some of the same decorators work for both companies, so you find similar patterns and designs in both a Santa Novelties box or a Franke box. Now, Heim shapes are distinctive and mostly mouth-blown. Here's a really good example of why I'm saying Heim Franke. My friend Gail in Minnesota sent these giant ball crinkle ornaments, bottom crinkles. These were made by Harry Heim. The snow was added, and they come in this Franke box. Now, they might have been bought as work in process when the Santa Novelties auction was going on and then packaged by George Franke. That's possible. But remember, George Franke also, for a time, employs the glassblowers and certainly the same decorators. The American-made glass ornament competition sees Santa Novelties bow out. New companies emerge like Paragon Glass and Kobe Glass. After leaving Savage, Maryland, Santa Heim behind, Harry moved back to San Diego, California, and died of a heart attack in 1953. Harry Jr. raced cars, married, divorced, had a son and a daughter who are very private people raising their own families. Harry Jr. died in 1988. His sister Dorothy met and married John Ellis during the Heim Fine Arts startup of 1940. They, with Mother Nellie, Sister Lillian, again, ran the San Diego facility. And I'm thinking that was a packaging facility because even though Jeep went out there to train, he only employed 50 people. The Heim family is interned with the Ellis plot at the Ellis plot in the Greenwood Memorial Park in San Diego, California. The Savage Mill, the cotton mill, was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1974. At one time, of course, Civil War canvas and then Christmas ornaments. Today, new businesses are creating their stories in Savage, Maryland. Wow. See, I told you there was more to the story of Harry Heim and Santa Novelties. Thanks for buying my books and watching my videos. Merry Christmas.